This is Dateline News and Conversation. Joining me tonight, as we do on most Sunday evenings, Hendrik and Blaz Kavcic. We're going to talk about some of the top stories in the news this week. But first, I want to welcome Hendrik and Blaz back to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Nice to
Thank
see you
you.
both.
Good evening.
Well, it's always a pleasure. All right, there's a lot happening, a lot going on, but I'm going to look at some of the top stories and get your comments. The first story, which I think is really huge, there's not much talk about it here in Russia, but there's been a lot of talk about it in the United States. Victoria Nuland. Did she resign, or was she nudged out? Hendrik, your thoughts first on Victoria Nuland and what it means.
Oh, first of all, Victoria Nuland, of course, is a terrible person. So I'm personally really glad she's out because she was standing behind already in 2014, the whole situation in Ukraine. And she, I think, I don't know, personally hates Russia so much. But I'm not sure if this would change something in the whole picture. Sorry. There are still many people who are supporting this kind of policy, U.S. against Russia. So maybe nothing will change. But I read an article on RT that the Biden administration maybe change her out or push her out because they are already going from Russia as a main enemy to China, and there they need another person in the State Department. I think Maria Zakharova also told this in her press conference that the Biden administration find out that Victoria Nuland's plan against Russia has not given any results, so that the U.S. policy is shifting against China. But as I said, I don't think it will change something in the whole picture because Victoria Nuland is, of course, one of the main persons, but she is not alone. There are many people in the State Department and other departments who are thinking that this policy against Russia is very important and is one of the most important things.
Blaz, what are your thoughts on Victoria Nuland either resigning or being nudged out? She certainly was going to be demoted. What are your thoughts?
Well, a few facts maybe. Victoria Nuland comes from Ukrainian Jewish ancestry. Her father was Jewish surgeon by the name Mr. Nudelman, and he emigrated from Tsarist Russia to United States and then changed his name. So we are, in fact, speaking about Victoria Nudelman here. Now, there is a strong commonality between Victoria Nuland and Madeleine Albright, who was a Czechoslovakian Jewish origin. And let's be objective. There are good things to be remembered regarding Albright's father. He was a patriot, a Czechoslovakian patriot, a supporter of Tomáš Masaryk, who was a very progressive person in his time. And then, of course, it's a question, what happened to their daughter, Madeleine Albright, who we all know for her terrible history and statements about how it was worthwhile killing 500,000 Iraqi children. Now, what caused this ladies to become ruthless killers aligned with Hillary Clinton with Dick Cheney, because the careers of Madeleine Albright and Victoria Nuland were all around these neocons and not only neocons, also neolibs like Clinton and neocon Cheney and so on. Now I would just propose that much like creators of Austrian School of Economics who reacted to Nazism of German and Austrian state, like Hayek, von Mises, Friedman, but then they, in reaction to this Nazi state monster, they created a neoliberal monster and neoliberalism. So there is hatred in background of people like this two women we are discussing, then Brzezinski, Ayn Rand, for instance, and many others who rejected Stalinism but ended as soldiers of neoliberalism. So Nudelman, Victoria Nuland, was always a soldier of globalism and will remain to be one. Nothing has changed. I mean, she is out of this post, which was the highest political post that could be occupied by a person who is not selected politician. So she may quite easily come back, and the networks from the background will keep on using her and people like she is. If we look a little bit in her professional profile, she was educated, she has education of a librarian, but has been for years one of the most powerful figures in American and global political affairs, creating wars and death and enormous destruction. So I agree with Hendrik that this is just a face, just a role one person was playing. The system has not changed. The decision-making system has not changed. So I'm also very happy that this nasty lady is off the scene for a while. I hope she will not return to the positions of power, but I would not be so sure.
Well, some very interesting comments. Hendrik mentioned that the United States has clearly declared in recent days and weeks that China is the number one enemy, and that America is now pivoting again for the second time to Asia. The first time was under Obama. And the purpose of that was to check China's expansion. Now, the purpose of that is very clearly to threaten China. It's going to be interesting to see who replaces her as the Undersecretary of State for Ukraine. As Blaz mentioned, and the Russians know this, it doesn't matter who the figureheads are. It doesn't matter who's the president. Somebody else will be recycled in, or a new person will enter the picture, and they will dance to the same song. This is really important for people to understand. The Russians finally, I think, get it. Blaz mentioned hatred seems to be motivating many of these people. I hadn't intended to ask you about Biden's State of the Union address the other night, but that was filled with anger and hatred towards everybody, including his own Supreme Court. He embarrassed them in public. And so I think this anger and this hatred not only is underlying or smoldering in the United States and even maybe the EU, but it has surfaced. It has come, I think, has come to the top, and it's getting to be very clear to a lot of people. Certainly people around the world know this and see it. It's the people that just cannot accept what is happening around them in their own countries and around the world. I don't know if you have any further comments, either one of you, on that before we move on to the next topic. Hendrik, Blaz, do you have anything further you want to say about that?
Well, maybe just on a positive note, and we will not going to discuss this in detail, but I agree with your assessment of the State of the Union address. What could be said positively about this bigger political event is the situation in United Kingdom, where George Galloway was elected into Parliament. This is, I would say, a sign of some moves, of some cracks on a political scene. And of course, George Galloway is also a very complex figure, but his stance on many important issues very positive and very progressive, including the situation in Gaza. I think that Gaza situation was actually the one that had pushed him up because of these states. Now, I wouldn't further comment on this State of the Union because I agree fully with what you said, Regis. And no, it was not. Let's say, addressing the nation in a positive way. Let's go there. Let's solve some problems together. It was just, I think, a sign of how far out these political structures are from the everyday Americans or Slovenians or Russians. It was just a sign of it.
Hendrik?
Yeah, only one short comment, maybe. With this personal hatred, you can never lead or develop a country. It will not help you. And this is what we're seeing all the time now in the West in the last years. We are claiming every time that it was Putin or it was this, it was that, but it's never us. It's never our problems. And there are a lot of politicians with this personal hatred towards other countries, towards other leaders, but it will not help us to develop our own countries. Never at all.
I'd like to ask the two of you while we're on the subject. One of the things that's been in the news in Europe, across the European Union, is the American election. It's obviously looks like it's going to be between Biden and Trump, unless something really drastic happens in both parties, but it looks like that'll be the two of them. The Europeans have taken sides. I'd like your thoughts on how Europeans are looking at who might be president. They seem to be deathly afraid of Donald Trump. But what are your thoughts? Blaz, I'll begin with you.
Okay. Now, I don't think we can just speak in a generalized way about Europeans. And I think it's a common mistake. We speak about French and Germans and Americans and Europeans, but it's actually a different structure. I mean, we were just before we started this live stream, we have been discussing a little bit of this situation in individual states, and it's different for the elites and for the common people. So I think it's a class issue. So I don't think Europeans exist as a meaningful entity, and we have to be more precise. Now, I personally see both candidates as globalist players. But sadly, I also see Robert Kennedy as a globalist player. He has recently started to be called Crypto Bobby because he's full force into crypto and blockchain and digital transformation into transhumanism. And also the best candidate, Dr. Jill Stein, she has no realistic chance, but as a personality, she's really... there is much to be admired about Dr. Jill Stein. but also she remains within the dogmatic globalist fetters regarding climate, regarding health, money, and political system. Now, she did say that the system was wrong, but does not fully understand the meaning of what she said. Now, back for a minute to Trump and Biden. I think both candidates are terrible. I mean, Putin, if I recall him correctly, he said that maybe they would be more expecting more from Biden because he's more predictable, but they don't care, and that both candidates will be problematic. But of course, they will try to work with any of them, which is, I think, a correct stance. So it is just a theater, a spectacle, and coming back. There is no democracy in United States and in any other country in the world. We live in an inverted totalitarianism, which Sheldon Wallen described, and I hope just that some people, some intellectual elites will start discussing the situation and the candidates and the political system from this point on. I wrote in my book, and I would like to be wrong, that political parties have long ago stopped to be a mechanism to transfer the will of the people into political decisions. So we have to reorganize the way the constitutional democracy work. And there was quite interesting discussion recently at Nixon Garland. There was some Professor Montero. He said very well that he also, and I heard it for the first time from, let's say, somebody from the American academic cycles, that we have to start thinking about a political change through new movements, that political parties are obsolete, and I totally agree with that.
Hendrik, what are your thoughts about American election cycle, Trump, Biden, pure spectacle? What does it look like to you?
Oh, first I want to say I agree completely with Blaz's analysis. It's really good, I think. In the end, it doesn't matter. But I think if you ask most people on the street in Norway, then they are for Biden. And this is because of the propaganda we have in our Western media, I think. The newspapers and the TV stations telling them all the time that Trump is terrible. And if you ask them, everybody, even an 8-year-old child, can say, oh, Trump is a racist, Trump is anti-feminism, and so on and so on. And if you ask them, please give me one reason, give me a sentence out of a speech, or give me any fact where you find out that he is a racist or something, then there is coming nothing, because people don't know really. They have no clue what is the difference in the US. And when I talk for Norwegian peoples, I would say most people don't know what is going on in the US. We are knowing Hollywood, and we are knowing the West Coast and the East Coast of the USA, but the rest of these big countries, we have no idea what's going on there and what people are thinking, what are their problems. So I'm not a fan of Trump or Biden or whatever, but I see the same propaganda in our media that we see when it comes to the Russian president or the Chinese president. Everybody on the streets knows that these are dictators, but if you ask them, nobody knows really something. So for myself, I would wish that Trump would be president, because maybe then we are seeing so much changes that we in Europe have to wake up and find out our own state or foreign policy. That would at least be my wish, but I don't think that will happen so fast. So I don't know.
Okay, can I
Yeah.
add something? Can I add something? To be fair, I have to say,
course.
I agree with what Hendrik said. From the angle of disruption to the present situation, I think that election of Trump would be, let's say, a positive shock. And as for Slovenian situation, there is Melania Trump. Melania Trump's wife is Slovenian lady, and that's one of the reasons why Trump has some circles of fans in Slovenia, even to the extent where they have are not terribly realistic. I mean, when they were mentioned to them, yes, okay, Trump, he might have been a disruption already when he was elected, but you remember the warp speed military project against the American nation with vaccination. Remember the tax reform. Well, then they just refused this fact. So the solution is a drastic boycott of elections, but I think that the general public is not yet ready for that. So that's why I don't want to be, and I agree with what Hendrik has added to my initial thoughts. Probably Trump will win, and hopefully he will. I don't know what it means, but I heard that Viktor Orban has been visiting Trump directly, I think yesterday in the States. So this is another quite interesting move, and maybe the two of you know something more about that.
No, I think you make a very important point there about Viktor Orban visiting Trump. As we all know, Viktor Orban is for the sovereignty and the independence of his country and other countries around the world. He's been one who's not been afraid to step out and say that this whole conflict of the West against Russia is insane. It's only hurting the West and America. So my thoughts as an American, I haven't voted in an American election in quite some time. I've come to the conclusion that the elections are, as Blaz stated, a spectacle. The American people really don't have any say in electing the president. They're selected. If you're not representing the moneyed class, you cannot even enter the race. Jill Stein is a classic example of that. And I know her, and I think she's the real deal. She's going around begging money to be able to just get on the ballot in different states. And so third parties in the United States really have had no chance. And as Blaz keeps saying, it's the system. The system is the problem. And there's no way that the problem can be solved by those people that we put in office. My own thoughts about Trump is, unless the election is just horribly rigged, and the Democrats are working hard at that, supposedly giving voter registration cards to millions of these people that are crossing the southern border. There's supposed to be 10 million of them that have already crossed the border. And they, short of making them citizens, they're giving them right to vote. And the reason behind this is so that the Democrats can rig and steal the election. Trump knows what he's up against. I think Trump is he in the minds of Europeans, he's to be feared. He's talked about pay up, NATO, or I'm not going to defend you. There's fears about him pulling America out of not only NATO, but European countries where they're really not needed to defend American interests. But nevertheless, as the Russians know, and they've stated repeatedly of late, it doesn't matter who's in the White House. The policy doesn't change. I want to shift gears now, and I want to move on to another, what I think is a really big story. and has a lot to do with everything we're talking about. Victoria Nuland, the politics in the United States, the United States Congress unwilling to send more money to Ukraine, America pivoting to Asia away from Ukraine being its number one priority. Zelinsky. He recently fired his top general, Zelinsky, who's more popular in the polls than Zelinsky himself, sent him off to be the ambassador to UK. And Zelinsky let it be known, just like he did with Zelinsky before he fired him, he's thinking about firing his foreign minister, one of his closest advisors and allies, Dmitry Kuleba. I want to ask each of you, what do you think is really happening behind the scenes in Ukraine? Victoria Nuland no longer in the picture. American aid and European aid drying up. Zelinsky blaming others, his generals and his foreign ministers, and actually striking out against Europe and the United States for not supporting Ukraine in this war to defeat Russia. What do you guys think that this means? Hendrik, I'm going to come to you.
To be honest, I don't really know. I don't know what is going on internal in Ukraine. For me, one of the main things I'm thinking about is all these refugees that we have in our European countries, if it's Germany or also in Norway. When I talk to them and ask them, and I'm standing obviously on the other side. I'm for their view, I'm the devil because I'm supporting Russia, even if I've never said this, even if I've never said I'm for the war or something. But most of these refugees I've talked to, and I ask them because I'm interested in their what they are thinking about, what's going on in Ukraine. And I think this support that you get from European countries, it's only words. Nothing will really happen. Did you understand this? When we deliver, or when Germany delivers some Leopard tanks on a front line that's 1,300 kilometers long, what does it change in the war? Nothing. And I can understand that you, as a Ukrainian refugee, support your country, but don't believe in all these words you are getting from European politicians or from US politicians, because one day the money will stop and then Ukraine is finished in a second. So please think a little bit about what is really going on, and don't trust these words from European politicians or US policy. But if you ask me what is going on in Kiev, then I have no real answer, because things are changing now completely. Zelensky is a puppet, of course, but that he have been all the time. Before his election already was supported by oligarchs, and now he is a puppet of Western countries or the US money. So don't ask me. I don't know really what's going on there.
Blaz, what are your thoughts?
Well, of course, like Hendrik said, nobody really knows. I don't think that the players really know much more. They are just puppets. I mean, the personalities on the scene. The real combinations are made in the background. But what is very important for us now in this moment is that the picture of situation in the world is becoming much clearer to anybody who wants to see the situation with open eyes of mind. I mean, the two projects, Israel and Ukraine, have completely shown a naked picture of the globalist politics and how all countries and all people are sacrificed. I mean, we speak about the global elite using United States, American citizens, about Slovenian citizens, killing tens of thousands of Palestinians, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, and they don't care. This is a good business for them. And the structure is completely clear. We have a clear picture now. We have quisling elites which are bribed from the globalist center, and the countries are then used as a tools of this globalist policy, which is only one direction. This is the full spectrum dominance, but people don't want to understand what it really means. But what it means is that in the background of this bloody kinetic wars, which are happening every now and then, all the budgets of all the states in the world are doubling their investment in military, and that the fourth industrial revolution and digital transformation is progressing on all sides, also all sides that are involved in conflicts, so-called conflicts. These are created projects, these are not conflicts. Zelinsky firing Zaluzhny, it's just a game. We speak here about dispensable futures. A very interesting book has been written on this subject, and personalities. As long as they are useful, they will play their role. It was quite significant that just before there were problems, and then Victoria Nuland came to Ukraine and solved this problem, and then she was solved in a way. So there are more and more complicated combinations in the background, because it's harder and harder to hide against the people, the taxpayers, the citizens of United States, of European Union, what is really going on. And this is just a bloody theater where the suffering of the people is real, but where the power structures are playing their ruthless game. And I'm sorry to say also the BRICS countries, they are playing along to a certain extent. Of course, if we speak about Russia and Russia's role in Ukraine, I mean, of course, they are defending themselves. The situation of Russia reacting to these provocations from NATO was, of course, there was nothing else to be done. But I hope, I don't want to be critical and unrealistic, but I hope that the leaders of BRICS countries, Russia, China, India, will start thinking more in alternative scenarios, rejecting the Agenda 2030, which is the real war against humanity, which we are facing now, but nobody sees that, because most of the people live in a matrix. And the real controversies are not understood even not by elites. Forget about the majority of citizens. And I remember still vividly the Yugoslav tragedy after in the 90s, where Yugoslavia was dismantled from outside, but it all had a form of conflicts among people, among religions, among nationalities. Until yesterday, everything was okay, and then we started to hear stories about Albanians raping Serbian women on Kosovo, which was all fabricated, of course. But then there were stories in another direction, and some of it might have been true, but it was all fueled from outside. So things are very complex. Things are not black and white. And suffering is ahead of us, but I hope we will enter next phase where there will be only one way of solving this problem, is reaffirming the role of national states. And this is the positive thing about BRICS, that they, so far, BRICS countries are still strategizing on the role, on the basic role of national states, which is very important. So this is the only way. I think one of the rare sources of optimism is that more and more people now see the picture more clearly because of Ukraine and Palestine.
Now, let me add one short thought. Of course, it is very interesting what is going on in Kiev or in Ukraine. But when we see a little bit picture, and Blaz, you're always very good to see the whole picture from above, then this is much more important, because now everybody, I think, knows that this war is lost. Russia will win this war, so there has to be a diplomatical solution as fast as possible. If it goes military, then Russia will win this war in the end. But so that is clear on one side. So the next question is, what is the bigger picture? And Blaz explained it very good already.
Well, I think it's very important, as both of you are noted, to understand the bigger picture. What's going on behind the scenes? And we're talking now about BRICS. BRICS has been in the news. I'm not sure if it's in the news in the United States. Here in Russia, I read about it all the time on Russian media. BRICS now is the chairmanship of BRICS this year is Russia. They're looking at adding another number of countries. I think what's important to point out is what Blaz was talking about. BRICS is evolving not as an alliance, but I think more as a movement. And they're trying to get other countries in the world, and it's the majority of countries that I think all believe in that, a strict adherence to the United Nations Charter, strict adherence to international law, not the rules-based order of the hegemon. What's more important and more understandable to people is a respect for the sovereignty of all countries, large and small. The equality of all countries, large and small. There will be differences. Large countries, wealthy countries, developing countries, more powerful countries, but a basic principle of equality. There's another basic principle of the BRICS that I think it's important to mention. The BRICS is focused on development of all countries. We have an expression, a rising tide raises all boats. Everybody should be able to benefit from the vast resources and knowledge and experience that we as human beings have. This is what are the foundation of BRICS. But there's something else going on, and Blaz is an economist. These nations are looking to replace the dollar. These nations are already beginning to trade in their own currencies, Russia with China, with India, with other countries. What people don't realize is this movement is the critical threat to the existing world order, American hegemony. I'd like your thoughts on that and how you see that, well, as a ray of hope. I think it's more than a ray of hope. I think it's the light at the end of the tunnel. But what are your thoughts, Hendrik?
When I see it from a Western European perspective, then unfortunately we are living in a complete information blockade that people don't know. When we hear something about Russian economy, for example, we hear always, the Russian economy is only so big as Spain or as the state of California. So it's nothing. So you have to really to search about this information. What is BRICS really? What is happening in Africa? And I hear a lot of podcasts from Africa. What these politicians are talking there in Africa is a direct threat to Europe, because the world will change completely. And we don't know this, unfortunately, or the most majority of people in our Western countries, at least in Scandinavia, I would say, don't know what is going on. This combined power of all these countries who are members of BRICS already and want to be member of BRICS, we have no imagination what this will do to the world. I would recommend to start as fast as possible to find out, because in the end, it will be the European countries standing completely alone in the world, and the rest is combined against us, or even not even against us. But if they are trading together, they don't need Europe. These 500 million peoples here in Europe are completely useless. We are not even a market for them. So that's why I said maybe Trump will give this positive shock, as Blaz said, so that we suddenly wake up in Europe and see and make our own foreign policy to work together with these BRICS countries, because we can demonize them, but it will not matter. They will succeed in the end. They have this combined power of people, of resources, natural resources, and if they start trading in their own currencies, they don't need us at all. We are only 500 million people here in Europe. It's not necessary to have them as a market or as partners if they don't want, if we don't want. So BRICS will change the world completely, I think.
Blaz, I know you've got some thoughts on this.
Well, always, I just don't know which angle from which angle to approach. Let me put it first very, very plainly. We are sitting in a bus and driving, and we have one steering wheel, and there is a maniac at the steering wheel, and we will all get killed if we leave this maniac at the steering wheel. But we just complain about a bumpy road, and he's driving too fast, and we would like to travel more comfortably, and so on. As long as we have maniacs at the steering wheels in all the country and above the countries, above the national states, the travel will not change for the better. So we have to be careful when we say we as the people of the world. We have enough resources from the previous century on already, so there is no scarcity. It's just the parasitic caste which is creating problems, and as long as this parasitic caste remains in power, there will be artificially created wars and supply chain problems and environmental problems and inflation and refugees and so on. As I mentioned in my book, Africa needs no help. Africa needs stop being robbed. Africa is the richest continent. Of course, everybody understands this statement, but when we come to the real political moves, what would it require to implement something like this? It means eliminating the role of every policy above the national state
and reorganize governance of each individual state in Africa or in Europe to serve their citizens. And in general terms, globally speaking, we need to slow down, not to speed up. And this is one of the problems of BRICS countries like China. They want to implement the artificial intelligence and 5G and 6G and 7G and blockchain and so on to develop faster. It is not necessary if we want to apply technology, as I propose in my book, in a way that it serves better quality of life of people and easier work. But this cannot work in the monetary system as it is today. And the catastrophical dollar-based international monetary system is now being replaced by even much worse solution. This is the digital currencies. And there is a dirty trick of people like Kathleen Austin-Fitz and so on by promoting the local digital currencies based on blockchain as solution. This is centralized decentralization, which is going the same direction. So if we want to solve the situation which we are discussing now, I don't think we have any other way than going to the sovereignty of the national states and then create solutions which are interest-based international cooperations. And this is not something completely new. We had decades ago the non-aligned movement, which was based on the sovereign developing national states, which said we are not East, we are not West, we don't want to join the communist bloc, we don't want to join the Western bloc, we are non-aligned. And there were serious personalities like Tito, Nasser, Nehru, and so on. But gradually, all these countries got infiltrated and corrupted. I can say for Yugoslavia, also under Tito, when Tito died in 1980, but also already in the 70s, there was a strong takeover of a global technocratic class, first of the Central Communist Committee, and then the process went on. And you know about the assassinations of other leaders of the non-aligned countries. But this is a solution which has been rather successful, and we will have to come back to that again. Cooperation of independent sovereign national states based on their mutual interests.
But Blaz, we are going in the Blaz, we are going in the opposite direction.
Yes.
In Europe. We are organizing everything in Brussels, and if there is a problem in the European Union, we say, oh, we have to have one department in Brussels who is organizing this for the whole European Union. Exactly. So we are going directly in the opposites.
Exactly, but not we. Our corrupt leaderships are driving, are at the steering wheel, and they are driving in the opposite direction of what would be good for us. And I completely agree with you. And one of the examples is this lunacy of European army. So on top of NATO, we should now create European army. But Europe does not have any meaningful identity. Europe does not. We have our culture, which we all to a certain extent know, and we would like to have our way of life and so on. But the identity, a positive identity of Europe does not exist. And we have to create, of course, there is no solution for mankind if the NATO and European Union and United States persists in the form as they are. We have to reorganize this. Of course, we should cooperate, but in a completely different way.
Mm.
Yeah. We're certainly in a transformative mode right now. Whether we're going to come out of it alive is another question. With all this talk of war, creating a European defense strategy or structure. I was reading this week, people in Poland, the German health minister, we talked about this with Hendrik in this past week, are all saying prepare for war. Ursula von der Leyen is saying we have to prepare for war. Blaz is saying these people are the ones who are driving the bus, and where they're driving us to, unmistakably, is to more war, is to World War III. And I'm getting kind of tired of hearing World War III. They are driving us towards the cliff of nuclear annihilation. That's the road we're on. As the American Western globalist hegemon recognizes that they're losing this battle for total domination of the planet. They're losing the battle to destroy us, who we are as humans. Will they do the unthinkable? Are they capable of doing the unthinkable, of taking the whole world down with them in a nuclear Armageddon? What do you think, Blaz? They capable of that?
Well, the positive thing about today is that at some points things have gotten so drastic that the picture is so clear. Like, I see positive trends in Houthis, in Palestinians, in Russians winning the war in Ukraine. The things are not black and white, not in Russia, not in Palestine. I know that Hamas has its roots in also the secret services of Britain and so on. And these things are not so black and white and so simple as they seem. But the fact of the matter is that Hamas today is the only meaningful force in the world fighting for Palestinians. This is clear. And what we are faced with, the truth now, few months old, but this is becoming stronger and stronger and clearer to great number of people around the world, is that Israel as such is a criminal project, and that Israel has been conducting Nazi policies for decades. This became clear now, and Israel has lost its saint status. This has happened. And I hope that this cracks in this globalistic project will continue to get bigger and stronger, and that people will start to see that we need to fight for a system which will work for us, which is today not the case.
Hendrik.
Well, I think these politicians are capable because they don't know. They have no understanding what a nuclear war or what a war really means. I think it's turned upside down. When I hear ex-military leaders or ex-military officers, they are more working for peace today as politicians from peace parties. Because yeah. I think they understand, they know what war means. And I've been on the front line in eastern Ukraine last year, but I would never say that I know what war is. I have no idea. But these military leaders, or often are the ex-military officers, they know what war really means. So they are against it. They warn us for this confrontations, on these escalations. They say they are the people that are saying we have to find diplomatical solutions. But I think these 20, 30, 40-year-old politicians that we have in Europe, they have no idea. They don't know what it means. And that is really dangerous. And the generation who was living in the Second World War, as my grandfather, for example, he told me about the war. These people are dying now. So we have no generation who has really have been in a war.
Yeah. Uh, as an American, Americans have no idea what it is like being in a war. Europeans who are old enough will understand and know the devastation that happened across Europe in World War II. Russians certainly aware of what happened in World War II. 27 million people lost, the country flattened, almost completely destroyed. But American people have no understanding of what it's like. American leaders have no understanding. Most of the people in American military did not serve in World War II or the Korean War. Many of them perhaps served during Vietnam, which was a war that we were lied into, which was a disgrace. 55, 57 million Americans killed there for nothing, for a lie. And so I think you've made good points that people really, I don't think people want war. The ordinary people in America and Europe do not want war. I want to ask you this question before we conclude. The farmers across Europe, really across almost all of Europe, I saw a map today with little tractors, almost every country, are protesting the policies of their governments about the sale or movement of agriculture. This is my question. Do the people in France who rose up against policies of Macron and the government, do the people in Italy, do the people in Germany who have risen up and protested, do they understand what we're talking about? Do you think that the system does not represent them? I'm going to leave you with that for our final question for tonight. Blaz.
Yeah, this is a very important question because I wholeheartedly support the protests of farmers, but they have no chance as long as they will try to solve their own situation alone as isolated problem in negotiations with the existing powers that be. Farmers and teachers and workers and pensioners and engineers will start to have a chance when they will decide to cooperate, not in demanding benefits from the existing powers, but in organizing a new form of government of their countries. United, they will stand. Separated, they will fall. But this feeling is emerging, but is not yet strong enough. And as long as we do not unite, the legitimate interests of all this working people of each individual country, and we change the structures which are in power, no improvement will be. Just the tricks will happen and obfuscations. So we have to go further.
Hendrik, your thoughts?
Oh, that I was reading in the newspaper there was only Nazis and fascists under these farmers. Of course, and that is a joke, and it's not the reality. But that was at least what I was reading in the newspapers, and that these are neo-Nazis almost. I think farmers are people who are very smart. They are working on their land. They standing with both feet on the ground. So they know that something is going on. If everybody's seeing the whole picture, I'm not sure. And it is really difficult also for us to see the whole picture. You have to really use a lot of time. You have to read a lot of things. You have to think about things. And it's sometimes that we even don't have any answer for this or that questions. And it's not enough to see the newspapers and see a TV channel and news, and then you know. No, you don't know, because you have to read a lot of newspapers, a lot of different foreign newspapers or internet sites. You have to read some analysis from all over the world to can make the whole picture. But I think that many people are having in their mind that something is going completely wrong and something has to change. But it is difficult for one people or one group, let us say farmers, to change something. It is impossible. So yes, we have to have many people on the street. Everybody who is feeling that something is going wrong in our society has to go out to the streets. But I think Norway will be the last country, unfortunately.
Well, I think we'll conclude on this note and we'll all agree. What we're doing and what many others are doing is trying to educate our fellow citizens, our fellow humans. So educating is extremely important. We've emphasized that uniting is extremely important. If we continue to isolate ourselves in our individual silos, smokestacks, with our personal issues, like the farmers, for example, right now. So we have to educate. We have to come together and unite. We have to organize. And then we have to resist in meaningful ways. I want to thank the two of you tonight for a fascinating discussion. I want to thank the people who have been watching and viewing this show tonight. I want to thank the people who have taken the time to comment. It was my hope in doing live streams that we could more engage with our audience and hope to grow it by allowing them to participate, to add their comments, and to ask their questions. So I want to thank the two of you, my very good friends, and I want to thank those who are watching. Please share with your circles of influence these shows, because that's the way the light begins to come through the cracks. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.